The puppy that changed everything. Picture this. You're walking home from another mundane Tuesday, thinking about nothing more exciting than what's for tea, when suddenly you spot something that stops you dead in your tracks. What would you do if that something turned out to be the kitty uncovering a mystery that had been waiting years to be solved? Well, that's exactly what happened to one bloke in Manchester, and I promise you, by the end of this story, you'll never look at stray animals the same way again. Before we dive into this absolutely mental tale, give us a cheeky like if you're ready for a proper emotional roller coaster. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Oh, Andy, I'm absolutely dying to know where are you watching from. Drop your city in the comments below. I love seeing how our community spans the globe. Right, let's get into it, shall we? It was one of those dreary February evenings where the sky looks like it and decide whether to rain or just stay miserable. Dave Matthews, not the famous one, just your average bloke from Didsbury, was trudging home after another soul-crushing day at the office. You know the type: mortgage worries, work stress, wondering if he'd remembered to put the bins out. Absolutely nothing suggested this Tuesday would be any different from the hundreds that came before. But life has a funny way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them, doesn't it? As Dave rounded the corner onto his street, something caught his peripheral vision. At first glance, it looked like a discarded black hoodie someone had carelessly tossed aside. But then, it moved. Just a tiny twitch, barely noticeable, but enough to make him pause mid-step. Curiosity getting the better of him, Dave approached cautiously. What he discovered made his heart skip a beat. Huddled against the cold brick wall was the tiniest puppy he'd ever seen, no more bigger than a smartphone, trembling like a leaf in autumn. Its cold-black fur was soaked through, matted against its skeletal frame, and those eyes. Christ, those eyes held a mixture of terror and the desperate hope that would haunt anyone with a beating heart. Now, Dave wasn't particularly what you'd call an animal person. He'd never owned a pet, never really fancied the responsibility. But standing there, looking down at this fragile little soul fighting against the elements, something shifted inside him. The puppy let out the faintest whimper, and that was it. Game over. Decision made. Come on then, little one, he whispered, gently scooping the pup into his arms. The poor thing weighed practically nothing, like holding a bunch of wet tissues. Dave quickly shrugged off his coat, wrapping the puppy snugly against his chest, feeling its rapid heartbeat flutter like a tiny drum against his ribs. The walk home felt different somehow. Dave found himself talking softly to his unexpected companion, promising warmth, food, safety, things he never imagined himself saying to a dog. But there was something about this particular creature that felt significant. Call it intuition, call it madness, but Dave sensed this wasn't just any ordinary rescue. But at his modest flat in Chorotin, Dave set up what could generously be called a puppy paradise. He laid out his coziest bath towels, filled the saucer with water, and raided his kitchen for anything remotely dog-friendly. Watching the little one cautiously approach the food, sniffing before taking tentative nibbles, Dave felt an unexpected warmth blooming in his chest. For the first time in ages, his flat didn't feel quite so empty. As the evening wore on, Dave noticed something rather endearing. Every time he moved around the flat, those bright little eyes followed his every step. When he finally settled on the sofa with a chupa, the puppy managed to climb up beside him, curling into the tiniest ball imaginable against his thigh. The soft sighing sound it made as it finally relaxed nearly broke Dave's heart. That night, Dave made a proper bed on the floor, blankets, cushions, the works. But when he woke up the following morning, he found his new flatmate had other ideas. The puppy had somehow managed to climb onto the bed during the night, and he was now sleeping peacefully beside him, tiny paws occasionally twitching in dreams. But here's where things started getting, well, a bit odd. The moment Dave stirred awake, the puppy was up like a shot. Not groggy or sleepy like you'd expect from such a young animal, but alert, intensely alert. Its ears were pricked forward, head tilted as if listening to something Dave couldn't hear. The little thing padded to the bedroom door and sat there, perfectly still, staring at the hallway with an focus that seemed almost human-like. What's got into you then, eh? Dave mumbled, shuffling to the kitchen to put the kettle on. But the puppy wasn't interested in breakfast. Instead, it began pacing, actually pacing by and forth in front of the front door, occasionally letting out sharp little barks that seemed far too mature for its size. Now, Dave might not have been a dog expert, but he knew enough to recognize that this behavior wasn't exactly normal puppy antics. This felt purposeful, urgent even. The strange behavior continued throughout the morning. The puppy would eat a bit, then return to the door, scratching at it with tiny claws, whimpering in a way that sounded almost conversational. It was as if the little thing was trying to tell him something important, something Dave was too thick to understand. By lunchtime, Dave's curiosity had reached breaking point. The puppy's behavior had become increasingly frantic, and those piercing little barks were starting to sound less like random noise and more like, well, like desperate communication. "All right, Mate," Dave sighed, clipping a makeshift lid to the puppy's collar. "Let's see what's got you so worked up, shall we?" The moment that front door opened, the puppy shot forward with surprising strength for something so small. Dave found himself being pulled along streets he'd walked 1,000 times before, but now seeing them through completely different eyes. The little dog moved with absolute determination, nose to the ground, stopping occasionally to sniff and recalibrate its direction. 20 minutes later, they traveled well beyond Dave's usual haunts, into an area of town he rarely visited. The puppy suddenly stopped dead in front of what looked like an abandoned storage unit tucked behind a row of terrace houses. The building was clearly derelict, peeling paint, broken gutters, weeds growing through the concrete. But the puppy was having none of Dave's hesitation. It began scratching frantically at the metal door, barking with an intensity that made Dave's skin crawl. "Easy, sir, little one," Dave murmured, but his voice betrayed his unease. Something about this place felt off, wrong, even. The puppy's barks became more desperate, echoing off the surrounding buildings. It was clawing at the door now, looking back at Dave with those intelligent eyes as if to say, "For God's sake, open it." Dave's hands shook slightly as he grasped the rusted handle. The door protested with a screech that could wake the dead, but it swung open, revealing darkness. The smell hit him first, damp, neglect, and something else. Something that made his stomach turn. As his eyes adjusted to the gloom, Dave's breath caught in his throat. "Sir," in the farthest corner beneath a pile of mildewed blankets, was another puppy. This one was in a far worse state, barely conscious, ribs clearly visible through matted fur. Breathing so shallow Dave initially thought it might already be too late. The pieces suddenly clicked into place with devastating clarity. The puppy he'd rescued wasn't lost at all. It had been searching for help, for someone, anyone. The weaker puppy. For several terrifying minutes, the poor thing barely responded, its breathing so faint Dave wasn't sure it would make it through the afternoon. But gradually, slowly, it began to show signs of life. A few licks of water here, a tiny nibble of food, sir. Dave found himself holding his breath, willing this fragile little soul to fight. When the puppy finally managed to lift its head and looked directly at him, Dave actually felt tears prick his eyes. "That's it, sweetheart," he whispered. "You're safe now, both of you." But the story doesn't end, sir, because life apparently had one more twist up its sleeve. While cleaning out the storage unit the following day, Dave wasn't about to leave it as he found it. He discovered something that made his blood run cold. Tucked beneath the pile of blankets was a crumpled piece of paper, so old and weathered it nearly fell apart in his hands. The handwriting was shaky, desperate. "Out to whoever finds this, please look after my babies. I can't keep them safe anymore. They deserve better than I can give them. Please don't let them suffer for my mistakes." Dave stood there in their abandoned unit, holding that heartbreaking note, and he suddenly understood the full magnitude of what had happened. Someone had made the most difficult decision imaginable, trusting that somewhere out there was a person kind enough to care. That note had been a prayer thrown into the universe, and somehow, impossibly, it had found its way to exactly the right person at exactly the right moment. The stronger puppy had refused to give up on its sibling. It had ventured out into a dangerous world, determined to find help, and he had chosen Dave. Not randomly, not by accident, but with the kind of intuition that makes you believe in something bigger than coincidence. 3 weeks later, Dave's life was unrecognizable. His flat, one silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional siren outside, now buzzed with the sounds of life. Two healthy, playful puppies had transformed his world in ways he'd never imagined possible. The weaker puppy, now christened Hope because, well, it seemed appropriate, had made a complete recovery. Its sibling, Scout, for obvious reasons, had appointed itself the official guardian of both Hope and Dave. The bond between the three of them was unlike anything Dave had ever experienced. Colleagues noticed the change immediately. Dave, who'd been known for his Monday morning grumbles and the general pessimism about life, was suddenly different, lighter somehow. He found himself looking forward to going home not because work was terrible but because two little faces would be waiting for him, tails wagging ready to celebrate his return as if he'd been gone for months rather than hours. But perhaps the most remarkable change was in Dave himself. The man who'd never owned a pet, who'd always claimed he was too selfish for that responsibility, had discovered a capacity for love he didn't know he possessed. Those two rescued souls hadn't just found a home, they'd created a family. On quiet evenings, when Hope and the Scout were curled up together on the sofa, Dave would look at them and marvel at the journey that had brought them together. He'd saved them, yes, but they'd saved him right back. They'd taken a life that had been running on autopilot and filled it with purpose, joy, and the kind of unconditional love that money can't buy. The note from the storage unit now sat framed on Dave's mantelpiece, a reminder that sometimes the most beautiful things in life come from the most painful sacrifices. Someone had loved these puppies enough to let them go, trusting that the world would catch them when they fell. And it did, in the form of one ordinary bloke from Manchester who thought he was just walking home from work but ended up walking straight into the adventure of a lifetime. Now, you know what you're thinking, this sounds too perfect, too neat, like something out of a feel-good film. But that's the thing about real life, isn't it? Sometimes it surprises you. Sometimes the universe aligns in ways that restore your faith in everything good and decent about humanity. Dave's story reminds us that heroism doesn't always look like what we expect. Sometimes it is as simple as following a tiny puppy who is desperately trying to save someone they love. Sometimes it's taking a chance on something small and fragile, even when you're not sure you're ready for the responsibility. Most importantly, it reminds us that family isn't always what you're reborn into. Sometimes it is what finds you on a random Tuesday evening when you least expect it but need it most. So next time you see a stray animal, or hear about someone who needs help, or feel that little tug in your heart telling you to do something kind, listen to it. You never know whose life you might save. And you might just discover that in saving them, you save yourself too. Right then, that's our story for today. If this tale of unexpected family and the second chances has touched your heart even half as much as it has touched mine, smash that like button and let me know in the comments. Have you ever had a moment where helping someone else ended up changing your own life completely? I'd love to hear your stories. Don't forget to subscribe for more incredible true stories that prove the world is still full of magic if you know where to look for it. Until next time, keep your hearts open and your eyes peeled for those small miracles waiting to happen. Cheers! And remember, sometimes the best things in life really do come in the smallest packages.